guess I didn't see him. What are you looking so sad about, champ?
Man, I'm surprised at you. I mean, I'm really insulted. I mean, that's not right what you just said.
What do you mean, what I just said?
I mean, I'm get a drink of water. I'm late getting home, but you talk. I said something about the greatest heavyweight champ, man. I'm a hometown man, and you talk about Joe Louis, man. Joe Louis wouldn't be nothing for me. Joe, I tell you, Joe, do you think you would have stood a chance with me?
Well, Clay, during one time during my career, I went on a Bomber of the Month tour.
Bomber of the Month? I would have been a bomb compared to you.
Well, you've been on the tour.
What's happening, my people? It's Cat Sports again, back for another afternoon with the family. Now, as usual, before we get started, let me give a shout out to the JBT community. It's just boxing talk. We're a group of people who just love to talk boxing. And we're always looking for others to join us. And you don't have to be a content creator. The only requirement is you just have to love to talk boxing. That's all. Miss Cass, Justin James, Tim Layton. Salute to everyone and welcome to another episode of Cat Sports, the Boxtorian. Today, remembering Big George Foreman. And you know what time it is. If it's Monday through Friday, 2 p.m., it's the Boxtorian, bringing you all that boxing history. Boxing is the greatest sport of them all. That's why we love it. Can't get enough of it. How's everyone today? This is the Tuesday afternoon edition of Cat Sports, the Boxtorian. Still early in this big week of boxing history. we're going to honor Big George Foreman today. He's going to do a profile on his life and career. We did it about a month ago, but we're going to do it again. Just to honor Big George today. Okay? I have to get started a little early because it's a long one. And when a board we did Floyd Mayweather, we had to put it in 2 parts. But first, we're still going to have our little highlights of boxing history. Now, it's recent history because today we're going to talk about the current top 10 pound-for-pound stars in the sport. Okay? As of March 2025, current top 10 fighters in the sport of boxing. Okay? So let's get into that. Current top 10 stars in the sport right now. Okay. How's everyone though? Tomorrow we're going to do take a look at Livingstone Bramble, who also passed away this weekend. But today is Big George. But now look at the current top 10 stars in the sport for the highlights of boxing history segment today. Okay, now 2025 is off to a great start as far as the sport of boxing goes. Though the year is not even 3-4 months old, it's already featured an undisputed title change of hands at 175. We had a successful undisputed title defense at 122 pounds. We saw one of the top names in the sport get severely tested in a barn burner of a fight that ended in a draw. And 2 pound-for-pound stars, who both are former 4-belt undisputed champions, have scheduled a dream match for the fall. Now, if the rest of the year is as good as these first few months have been, as boxing fans, we're looking at another good year. Okay, so let's look at take a look at the top 10 stars in the sport currently, pound for pound. Okay, current top 10 pound for pound. Okay, coming in at number 10, we have Slick Shakur Stevenson. Now, I didn't make this list, but I co-signed it wholeheartedly. This is a very good list here. At number 10, Slick Shakur Stevenson. What's up, Kerr? There he is right there on the screen. Shakur currently has a record of 23 wins, no losses, with 11 knockouts. Okay. Now, fights at 135. Currently the WBC champion at 135. Shakur Stevenson is. It's a hard knock life for the underappreciated Stevenson, who's unbeaten in 23 fights, has held belts at 3 weights, and seems in his prime at age 27. He was set for a defense at 135 against Floyd Schofield, who had no hoper Josh Padley jumped in his lap as a sub and was forced into a no-win situation that ended predictably when he stopped Padley in round 9. If ever there was a guy in need of a career-defining fight, it's Slick Shakur Stevenson. Okay. Coming in at number 9 is the Mexican Monster, David Benavidez. Okay. Currently has had 30 fights on the dot, 30-0 with 11 knockouts. With 24, 30-0 with 24 knockouts for the Mexican Monster, for a knockout ratio of 80%. Okay. Currently fights at 175. No major titles held there at the moment. Now, it's not the fight he wanted or the one everyone else suggested he deserved, but Benavidez made the most of the spotlight opportunity against David Morrell with a punishing decision. They made him a man to be dealt with at 175 pounds. Finally, content with the prospect of a Canelo Alvarez fight never happening, the Mexican Monster is a fascinating next challenge for the two biggest players at light heavyweight, Dmitry Bivol and Artur Beterbiev. His size, tenacity, and gas tank would make him a tough out for either one of those guys. Okay? Thomas Hill in the building. What's up, T. Hill? We're looking at the current top 10, T. Hill. Okay? We had Slick Shakur Stevenson at 10. David Benavidez came in at number 9. But salute Thomas Hill. We're going to get into Big George in a few moments. But, let's look at the current. I found this top 10 pound for pound list, and I thought it was a very good one. Okay? So coming in at number 8, we have that monster from Baltimore, Maryland, Gervonta Tank Davis. Okay? Davis is currently, dropped my phone. 30 wins, no losses, 1 draw, 28 knockouts, for a knockout ratio of 93.3% for Tank. Okay, let's talk about Tank briefly. Now, the second lightweight on the list, Davis is the powerful punching complement to Shakur Stevenson's skill, sublime skill, and artistry. Davis's last outing was a draw with 130-pound champion Lamont Roach, and everyone is looking forward to the rematch of that fight. Now, even if Tank did not possess his off-the-charts punching power, he would still be an elite lightweight on the basis of his crafty boxing, southpaw style advantage, clever footwork, and visible killer instinct. But it is pure power that really sets Tank apart. Okay? Gervonta Tank Davis coming in at 8. I thought this was a really good pound for pound list. Coming in at number 7, we have Jesse Bam Rodriguez. Jesse Bam. Okay, there's Jesse Bam. Now, Jesse Bam, Tank Davis is currently the WBA champion at 135 too, okay? Jesse Bam currently has 21 fights, 21-0, 14 by way of knockout, okay? Jesse Rodriguez. He fights at 115 currently, and he's holds the WBC title there at 115. Okay. Now, could Rodriguez be the latest in an intermittent line of Americans to draw attention to the extreme lighter weights? Well, it'd be foolish to suggest it's not deserved. The 25-year-old was a legitimate candidate for 2024's Fighter of the Year based on knockouts of championship-level foes in Juan Francisco Estrada and Pedro Guevara. And we're not ashamed to be calling loudly for Bam to have a date with none other than the monster. They owe you anyway. Okay? Bear with me for a moment. There we go again, every day. Yeah. It's not bad to be calling for Bam and the monster. But most people would like to see Nakatani. Me too, first. Yeah. But call it a battle of the little giants, as Bam and Naoya got in there. Like they did Salvador Sanchez and Wilfredo Gomez. Remember, this will be the second battle of the little giants for this generation. And for this generation, the second battle of the little giants, Bam and the monster. Okay, coming in at number 6, Canelo Alvarez. Yes, Canelo Alvarez. Okay, love him or hate him. He's one of the top ones out there today. Now, Canelo currently has 66 fights. He's won 62, lost 2 draws, 39 by the knockout route. Canelo Alvarez coming in at number 6. He's currently at 168, and he has the WBA, WBC, WBO. He was the first 4-belt champion at that weight, as we know, but he got stripped of the IBF. And I think his opponent on Cinco de Mayo was the man he got stripped because of, William Skull. Just Do Boxing in the building. What's up, Just Do Boxing? 4 o'clock, shorty. Okay. We are just doing a little pound for pound currently as of March 2025. I found this list. I thought it was pretty good. Let me review it real quick. At number 10 was Slick Shakur Stevenson. 9, the Mexican Monster David Benavidez. 8, Gervonta Tank Davis. 7, Jesse Bam Rodriguez. Now number 6, we're on Canelo Alvarez at number 6. 168, 3-belt unified, WBA, WBC, WBO. Just when it looked like he was finally going to call Jake Paul's bluff, and given the problem child a viral beating, one that I would have loved to have seen, the man known simply as Canelo pivoted to finalize what's sure to be one of the year's most talked about and fascinating fights. Fellow 40-division champion Terence Crawford provides a challenge unlike any Alvarez has faced, but there's work to do in the meantime with dubious IBF title claimant William Skull. That's the man who Canelo was stripped for. Skull earned his belt after the Mexican star was stripped. And the 2025 agenda: beat the pretender, regain undisputed status, and top off an already enviable resume with a win over another first ballot Hall of Famer, Bud Crawford. Okay, that's coming up in the fall. Coming in at number 5, Artur Beterbiev. Okay, currently 22 fights, 21, just lost his first fight last month, 20 knockouts, 95.2% knockout ratio for Artur Beterbiev. Of course, at 175 currently. No major titles. He was undisputed, but currently no major titles. But I believe he's got a rematch coming up with Bivol. Okay. Now, the second titleless light heavyweight on our list, Beterbiev only joined the belt-free ranks upon losing his undisputed status in the weight class by majority decision to Dmitry Bivol in their high-profile Saudi Arabian match on February 22nd. Now 40 years old, Beterbiev started fast and slowed down the stretch to allow Bivol rally, completely flipping the script of their first fight last October and setting the stage for a trilogy between two of the generation's most intense rivals. Now, series clinching win could yield Canelo, Benavidez, or move toward bigger quarry, while a loss would put an unsightly dent in the legacy after a 20-0, 20 knockout start for Artur. And coming in at number 4 is Dmitry Bivol. Okay, the man that just took Artur's undisputed status. What's up, Dmitry? Dmitry currently has 25 fights. He's 24-1, only lost to Artur Beterbiev. Bivol has 12 knockouts, okay? Of course, fights at 175, and he's undisputed. IBF, WBA, WBC, WBO, currently the undisputed champion at the weight class. Now, the first of 2 undisputed champions on this list. Bivol waited for months for a chance at revenge against Beterbiev and delivered down the stretch with a stirring rally after he looked out of his element at the fight's halfway point. The now 34-year-old provided his worth on the big stage with a technical undressing of Alvarez 3 years ago and backed it up with the Beterbiev win, his 24th in 25 fights. As if the trilogy prospects alongside his own possible duels with Benavidez and Alvarez weren't enough, Bivol suggested at the post-fight news conference that he could be cajoled to move up to cruiserweight too. Know what's up there? Yeah, that would be a good fight between him and you know what I'm talking about. The guy that kind of looked like Bivol. I can't think of his name right now, but y'all know what I'm talking about. Y'all a hardcore fan. Okay, coming in at number 3, we have the Monster. They owe you anyway. Number 3, pound for pound. Monster currently has 29 fights, 29-0, 26 knockouts, 89.6% knockout rate. BN Boxing News in the building. What's up, BN Boxing News? And Mike Mazik in the building. What's up, Mike Mazik? Miss Cass also in the building. What's up, Miss Cass? I haven't seen you in about 15 minutes or so. How you doing? Okay. Yeah, we're doing a little pound for pound list before we start talking about Big George Foreman. We're at I'm going to review it when I finish for everybody. We're at number 3, the Monster. There, anyway. Yeah, I told you his stats: 29-0, 26 knockouts, 89.6 ratio. Currently at 122. Still undisputed there. Got all 4 of the majors: IBF, WBA, WBC, WBO. Now the beat goes on into 2025 for the Monster, who opened his calendar year with a 4th-round demolition of Yi Jun Kim in late January, after fighting a grand total of 13 rounds while notching a pair of wins in 2024. Now, it's hard to imagine that the Monster is 31, and his next fight will be his 30th in his career, given that he's been a champion in one form or another, once grabbing the WBC belt at 108 in 2014. This man been a champion for the last 11 years, and he got his first belt in just his 6th pro fight, right? Okay. Number 2, Alexander Usyk. Alexander Usyk is number 2. Usyk currently has 23 fights, 23-0, 14 knockouts. So y'all know who number 1 is, right? Usyk is currently at heavyweight, and he was undisputed, but he got stripped of the IBF, held currently by Daniel Dubois. Usyk still has the WBA, WBC, WBO, 3-belt unified. Now, Ukrainian is the man who's beaten the relevant men at heavyweight and cruiserweight, picking up undisputed status in both classes before the IBF was nonsensically stripped him in favor of a guy he'd already stopped in 9 rounds. And what they stripped him like 10 minutes after the fight. Man. Another chance to beat Daniel Dubois and regain his 4-belt status was delayed when the Brit pulled out of a defense with Joseph Parker, though it could leave Usyk with a Parker fight. Though it could leave Usyk with a chance to fight with a Parker fight, who's reinvented himself with 6 straight wins, and Parker got some big names last year too. Regardless, Usyk says it won't be long, no matter what, who he draws next. He'll be back in there soon, right? Usyk says, I feel great. I feel I have 2 fights to prepare for. Not more, just 2. And number 1, pound for pound. This ain't my list, but I call it my list. Number 1, pound for pound. Drum roll, please. Da, 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 da. Bud Crawford, number 1, pound for pound. Bud Crawford currently has 41 fights. Won all 41 of them, with 31 of them by knockout. Okay. Crawford is currently at 154, and he holds the WBA title up there. It seems Crawford isn't a guy who likes to have a bad impression. 37-year-old was pushed to the limit for the first time in forever while wresting the WBA 154-pound strap from Israel Madrimov last summer. So rather than simply slogging it out, he stepped back onto the superstar side of things. The duel with Canelo later this year is a monumental challenge for Crawford, but his underrated strength and ever-present tenacity figure to make it a far more compelling encounter than simple physical dimensions might imply. Yeah, I don't think he's going to get his hand raised, but I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if Bud pulled that off. If anybody can do it, Bud Crawford can do it. But let's review real quick for the people that just came in. At number 10 was Slick Shakur Stevenson. Number 9, the Mexican monster, David Benavidez. Number 8, that monster from Baltimore, Gervonta Tank Davis. Number 7, Jesse Bam Rodriguez. Number 6, Canelo Alvarez. Number 5, Artur Beterbiev. Number 4, Dimitri Bivol. Number 3, the Japanese monster, Naoya Inoue. Number 2, Alexander Usyk. And number 1, Old Bud Crawford. Okay. All right, let's get ready to talk about Big George Foreman. I was trying to start a little early, but we start right at the 2:30 almost. Okay, remembering Big George Foreman, but let's do this first. Okay, let's give a moment of silence for Big George before we start. Okay, a moment of silence for Big George Foreman. Rest in peace, Big George Foreman. Okay, let's get into the show now. Okay. Remembering Big George Foreman, it's just going to be a profile. We did him about a month ago, but we're going to honor him again. Y'all don't mind, do you? Okay. How's everybody today? It's Tuesday. We're still early in the week. This big week of boxing history. And remember, tomorrow we're going to honor Livingstone Bramble, who also passed away this weekend. That's tomorrow. Thursday, the Boxing in the State series continues with South Dakota. And then Friday, the regular profile is going to be JCC, Julio Cesar Chavez, Friday. Okay? But right now, remembering Big George Foreman. I think. Yeah, here we go. It's Tuesday. It is Tuesday, right? This time go by so fast. It might be Thursday. No. When I woke up, it was Tuesday. Okay. Anybody come in before we get started? Nope. All right, let's get started then. And I went past. I got a bunch of pictures. We're not gonna just show pictures of who he's. We're just gonna just keep showing images of Big George and him fighting and everything as we go to. Okay. It would have been nice to have that up there while we was taking a moment of silence, wouldn't it? Okay. But remembering Big George Foreman. I don't need you light. Okay. George Edward Foreman. He was an American professional boxer, businessman, minister, and author. In boxing, Big George competed between 1967 and 1997. He had a 30-year career, and he was nicknamed Big George. He was a two-time world heavyweight champion and an Olympic gold medalist. He's the namesake of the George Foreman Grill. Remember? Yeah. Okay. Now, Big George, he was born in Marshall, Texas, January 10th, 1949. George Edward Foreman, okay? Died March 21st, 2025, 76 years of age, in Houston, Texas. Now, nicknamed Big George, he fought at heavyweight his entire career. He was 6'3" tall, had a reach of 78 inches, fought in the orthodox stance, had a total of 81 fights during his career. He won 76. No, he won 60. He had a total of 81 fights during his career. He won 76, okay? He lost 5, and he had 68 by way of knockout. I don't know why I didn't have that ready. But the knockout rate was a good one. 89.4%. Okay, for Big George. 76 fights, 89.4% knockout rate is incredible, right? Now, oh my goodness, how did I get back to Tank? OMG. Bear with me for one moment. I got out of order here. Let's start over. Big George Foreman. Now, Bud Crawford was number one, right? Yeah, there we go. Big George. Now, after a troubled childhood, Foreman took up amateur boxing and won a gold medal in the heavyweight division at the 1968 Summer Olympics in Mexico City at 18 years of age. Now, having turned professional the next year, he won the world heavyweight title with a stunning second-round knockout of the then undefeated Joe Frazier in 1973. He defended the belt twice before suffering his first professional loss at the hands of Muhammad Ali in the Rumble in the Jungle in 1974. Now, unable to secure another title opportunity, Foreman retired after a loss to Jimmy Young in 1977. Following what he referred to as a born-again experience, Foreman became an ordained Christian minister. 10 years later, he announced a comeback to the boxing ring. And in 1994, at age 45, won the unified WBA, IBF, and lineal heavyweight championship titles by knocking out 26-year-old Michael Moorer. Yeah, he was lineal because Moorer had beat Holyfield and Foreman beat Moorer. He beat the man that beat the man, so that makes you lineal, right? Yeah, he dropped the WBA belt rather than face his mandatory title defense soon after he beat Moorer, and following a single successful title defense against Axel Schultz, Foreman relinquished his IBF title as well on June 28, 1995. At 46 years of age and 169 days old, he was the oldest world heavyweight champion in history. He's still the oldest heavyweight champion, but he was the oldest champion in boxing, period. But Bernard Hopkins passed that. Now, Foreman was the oldest to ever win the World Heavyweight Boxing Championship of major honors, and the second oldest in any weight class after Bernard Hopkins at light heavyweight. Foreman retired in 1997 at the age of 48 with a final record of 76 wins, 68 knockouts, and 5 losses. 89.4 rate, remember. One of the famous losses coming at the hands of Muhammad Ali, who hit him with a lightning fast 1-2 combination, which was the fastest punch Foreman had ever seen. Now, Foreman was inducted into the World Boxing Hall of Fame and International Boxing Hall of Fame. The International Boxing Research Organization rates Foreman as the 8th greatest heavyweight of all time. In 2002, Foreman was named one of the 25 greatest fighters of the past 80 years by The Ring magazine, and The Ring ranked him as the 9th greatest puncher of all time. He was a ringside analyst for HBO's boxing coverage for 12 years until 2004. Outside boxing, Foreman was a successful entrepreneur and known for his promotion of the George Foreman Grill, which has sold more than 100 million units worldwide. In 1999, he sold the commercial rights to the grill for $138 million. Wow. Mike Rim. What's up, Mike Rim? How are you today? we're remembering Big George Foreman today, Mike. Okay, let's look at George's early life. Okay, let's look at his early life. Now, George Foreman was born in Marshall, Texas on January 10th, 1949. He grew up in the 5th Ward community of Houston, Texas, with 6 siblings. Now, although he was raised by J.D. Foreman, whom his mother had married when George was a small child, his biological father was Leroy Moorhead. Now, by his own admission in his autobiography, George was a troubled youth. He dropped out of school at the age of 15 and spent time as a mugger. At age 16, Foreman had a change of heart and convinced his mother to sign him up for the Job Corps after seeing an ad for the Corps on TV. Now, as part of the Job Corps, Foreman earned his GED and trained to become a carpenter and bricklayer. Now, after moving to Pleasanton, California, with the help of a supervisor, he began to train. Foreman was interested in football and idolized Jim Brown, but gave it up for boxing. Okay? Yeah, he gave up football for boxing. Good move, Big George. Excellent move. Okay, let's look at George's amateur career. Amateur career for Big George Foreman. Okay, won the gold medal, remember? 1968 Summer Olympics. Foreman won a gold medal in the boxing heavyweight division at the 1968 Mexico City Olympic Games. In the finals, Foreman defeated the Soviet Union's Jonas Cepelis. The referee stopped the fight in the second round. Cepelis' face was already bleeding in the first round from Foreman's punches, and he had to take a standing 8 count early in the second round. Cepelis, fighting out of Lithuania, was a 29-year-old veteran with a 12-year-long amateur career, having over 220 fights in his record. Quite experienced, and 10 years older than Big George. Okay? After winning the gold medal fight, Foreman walked around the ring carrying a small U.S. flag and bowing to the crowd. Foreman maintained that earning the Olympic gold medal was the achievement he was most proud of in his boxing career, more so than either of his world titles. Yep. He valued that gold medal more than he did both of his world titles. Now, Foreman sparred 5 rounds on 2 different occasions in July 1968 with former world heavyweight champion Sonny Liston. Okay. Memento. Okay. I gotta keep track of the cash here. Okay. Now, yeah, Foreman sparred 5 rounds on 2 different occasions in July 1968 with former world heavyweight champion Sonny Liston. Okay. Liston sparred in 22-ounce custom-made Everlast gloves. And Foreman later recalled that Liston was, no doubt, the scariest human being I've met in the ring. The only man to ever make me back up consistently. On September 21st, 1968, Foreman won his second decision over Otto Evans to make the U.S. boxing team for the Mexico City Olympic Games. Okay, we're going to go on past that. His amateur record was 22 wins, 4 losses when he turned professional. And that's amazing because he fought this Russian in the finals of the Olympics, 10 years older than him, with 220 fights. And Big George only had 26, but he stopped him. Okay, let's go on to Big George's professional career now. Yeah, going up against the Russian with over 200 amateur fights. And George didn't even have 30. Wow. Now, his early career for Big George. Now, Big George turned professional in 1969 with a 3-round knockout of Donald Waldheim in New York City. He had a total of 13 fights in his first year, winning all of them, 11 of them by knockout. Then the next year, 1970, Foreman continued his march toward the undisputed heavyweight title, winning all 12 of his fights, 11 by knockout. So he had 13 in 69, 12 in 1970, right? And he won 11 of those 12 by knockout. Now, among the opponents he defeated in 1970 were Gregorio Peralta, whom he decisioned at Madison Square Garden. That was the only fight that went the distance. Although Peralta showed that Foreman was vulnerable to fast counterpunching mixed with an assertive boxing style. Oh, Ali must have looked at that one before he fought him, you know. Now, Foreman then defeated George Chuvalo by technical knockout in 3 rounds. Yeah, Chuvalo was my toughest chin in boxing history. Foreman got him by TKO. Okay, Chuvalo never was knocked down in his career. He got stopped, but he finished all of his fights on his feet. Okay. Yeah, he beat Chuvalo by TKO. Okay. In 3 rounds. Then he defeated Charlie Polite in 4 rounds and Boone Kirkman in 3 rounds. Now, Peralta and Chuvalo were Foreman's first world-level opponents. Peralta was the number 10 ranked heavyweight in the world in January 1970 by the Ring magazine, while Chuvalo was number 7 in the world, according to Ring magazine, okay, when they fought Foreman. Peralta was 10, Chuvalo was number 7. Okay. In 1971, Foreman won 7 more fights, winning all of them by knockout, including a rematch with Peralta, whom he defeated by knockout in the 10th and final round in Oakland, California, and a win over Leroy Cardwell, whom he knocked out in the 2nd round. After amassing a record of 32-0, 29 knockouts, Foreman was ranked as the number 1 challenger by the World Boxing Association and World Boxing Council. And remember, he had 13 fights his first year, 12 his second year, 25 fights his first 2 years, 32 fights in his first 3 years in the game. So first reign as heavyweight champion for Big George. Because remember, he was ranked number 1 by the WBA and WBC after 3 years of fighting. So his first championship reign, Foreman versus Frazier. In 1972, still undefeated and with an impressive knockout record, Foreman was set to challenge undefeated and undisputed world heavyweight champion Joe Frazier. Okay, and Frazier was lineal too because he had beat Ali. Because remember, when Ali came back from his suspension, he was still lineal champion because he had beat Liston. Liston had beat Patterson, and nobody else could be lineal yet because you had to fight Ali to be lineal, and Ali was suspended. So when Frazier beat him, Frazier became the lineal heavyweight champion. Okay, so when he fought Foreman, he was undefeated, undisputed, and lineal champion Joe Frazier. Now, despite boycotting a title eliminator caused by the vacancy resulting from the championship being stripped from Muhammad Ali, Frazier had won the title from Jimmy Ellis after the tournament and defended his title 4 times since then, including a 15-round unanimous decision over the previously unbeaten Ali in 1971, after Ali had beaten Oscar Bonavena and Jerry Quarry. Now, despite Foreman's superior size and reach, he was not expected to beat Frazier and was a 3-1 underdog coming into the fight. Yeah, that's why I say Ali was really went overboard with the trash talking with Frazier. He had a little gorilla doll that he called Joe Frazier, and he would punch on it and do that rhyme because Frazier really supported Ali. I told you when they had the tournament to replace Ali, like 68, somewhere around in there. Frazier boycotted it in support of Ali. Didn't even fight in the tournament. He won the belts after the tournament from Jimmy Ellis, who won the tournament. So yeah, Ali was way overboard. But let's get back to Foreman. Okay, now they called this fight the Sunshine Showdown between Foreman and Frazier. It took place on January 22nd, 1973 in Kingston, Jamaica, with Foreman dominating the fight to win the championship by TKO. In ABC's broadcast, Albert Cosell made the memorable call, "Down goes Frazier, down goes Frazier, down goes Frazier." Now, before the fight, Frazier was 29-0 with 25 knockouts, and Foreman was 37-0 with 34 knockouts. So you knew there was going to be a knockout. There were two incredible knockout rates for both of those guys coming in there. Frazier was knocked down 6 times by Foreman within 2 rounds, right? And the 3 knockdown rule was not in effect for this fight. After the second knockdown, Frazier's balance and mobility were impaired to the extent that he was unable to evade Foreman's combinations. Frazier managed to get to his feet for all 6 knockdowns. That was Joe Frazier. But referee, you had to kill Joe Frazier to beat him, or the referee had to stop him. Frazier was going to get up. But referee Arthur McCante eventually called an end to the one-sided fight because Foreman was going to keep knocking Frazier down, and Frazier was going to keep getting up. So that could have went on the entire 15 rounds. Could have been 100 knockdowns. Frazier was going to get up 100 times, so the referees had seen enough, right? Okay, so Frazier versus Roman after that. And like I always say, it was just a terrible style matchup because Joe Frazier only knew one way to fight. Coming forward, he was just giving up too much size and reach to get inside where he wanted to be at, man. He had to go through too much, against George Foreman. So just a terrible, terrible, terrible style matchup right there. Foreman versus Roman. Foreman was sometimes characterized by the media as an aloof and antisocial champion. That's why when he came back in the 80s and 90s, everybody was like, is that the same guy? Because he was smiling and joking. And the first George Foreman in the 70s was just antisocial, always had a scowl on his face and everything. And, people that saw him in the 70s was like, this just got to be another guy named George Foreman. This can't be the same person, right? But he had just had a whole entire change of personality. Yep. Yeah, because in the 70s, he was characterized by the media as an aloof and antisocial champion. He was a tough interview. They said he sneered and was rarely available to the press. But when he came back in the 80s and 90s, the press couldn't get rid of him. He was ready to talk in any camera he could find, So that's why everybody was, is this the same George Foreman? And Foreman later said he was emulating former world champion and occasional sparring partner Sonny Liston, right? Now, Foreman defended his title successfully twice during his initial reign as champion. His first defense in Tokyo, Japan, pitted him against Puerto Rican heavyweight champion Jose Roman. Now, Roman was not regarded as a top contender, but he had managed to beat a few decent fighters, such as EBU champion, European Boxing Union champion. Why do I keep losing my place? Bear with me for a minute. Okay, I see what happened. Yeah, he had beat the European boxing champion. Now I'm on Sonny Liston. How did that happen? Yeah, the European boxing champion was from Spain, Jose Manuel Urtain. And Roman was ranked as the number 7 heavyweight contender in the March 1973 issue of the Ring magazine, okay? And Foreman won the fight in only 2 minutes, okay? Not 2 rounds, 2 minutes. Wow. Okay, Foreman versus Norton. Foreman's next defense was against a much tougher opponent. In 1974, in Caracas, Venezuela, he faced the highly regarded future Hall of Famer, Ken Norton. Norton was 30-2 at the time. He was a boxer noted for his heavy punch and cross-arm defense, a style Foreman emulated in his comeback, right? And Norton had broken the jaw of Muhammad Ali in a points victory a year earlier. Norton was only one of two people that had beaten Muhammad Ali at that point besides Joe Frazier. Now, Norton had performed well against Ali in their two fights, winning the first on points and narrowly losing the second. I thought Norton won the second one, right? And Norton developed a reputation for showing nerves against heavy hitters, largely beginning with this fight against George Foreman. After an even first round, Foreman staggered Norton with an uppercut a minute into round two, buckling him into the ropes. Now, Norton did not hit the canvas, but continued on wobbly legs, clearly not having recovered, and shortly he went down a further 2 times in quick succession, with the referee intervening and stopping the fight in the second round. Yeah, it was time to stop that because Norton was done. Okay. There was considerable controversy after the fight, as both fighters ran into unexpected trouble with the Venezuelan government. The fight had been made in Venezuela on the basis that all taxes would be waived. However, a day after the fight, the governor renounced that decision, and the tax problems led to the fight being dubbed the Caracas Caper. Okay? Now comes the Rumble in the Jungle. Okay? Rumble in the Jungle. Foreman versus Ali. Foreman's next title defense on October 30th, 1974 in Kinshasa, Zaire against Muhammad Ali was historic. The fight, promoted as the Rumble in the Jungle, exceeded even the wildest expectations. During training in mid-September, Foreman suffered a cut above his eye, forcing postponement of the fight for a month. And the injury affected his training regimen, as it meant he could not spar in the build-up to the fight and risked the cut being reopened. He later commented, "That was the best thing that happened to Ali when we were in Africa. The fact that he had to get ready for the fight before being able to box, Foreman." But Ali would have still beat him because he put that, whether Foreman would have been able to spar in training or not, he still would have fell for the rope-a-dope, okay? He still would have fell for the rope-a-dope. Now, Ali used this time to tour Zaire, endearing himself to the public while taunting Foreman at every opportunity. Foreman was favored, having crushed undefeated heavyweight champion Joe Frazier and toppled formidable challenger Ken Norton, both within 2 rounds, okay? So he was heavily favored to beat Ali. But we all know what happened. When Foreman and Ali finally met in the ring, Ali began more aggressively than expected, outscoring Foreman with superior punching speed. In the second round, Ali retreated to the ropes, shielding his head and hitting Foreman in the face every opportunity. Foreman dug vicious body punches into Ali's sides. However, Foreman was unable to land many big punches to Ali's head, and the ring ropes were unusually loose. And Foreman later charged that Angelo Dundee, Ali's longtime trainer, had loosened them as part of Ali's tactics to lean back and away from the wall swings before clinching Foreman behind the head. But Angelo Dundee did not loosen up the ropes. He said he didn't even know about the rope until everybody else found out about it in the ring. Dundee stated that not only did he not tighten the ropes, did he not loosen the ropes because they were so loose due to the heat. Ali came up with the rope-a-dope strategy entirely on his own. Angelo didn't learn about it until Ali got in the ring and started doing it, okay? Now, Ali had been known as a fighter of speed and movement, but the rope-a-dope technique worked exactly to plan, since Foreman had not had a fight that lasted past the fourth round since 1971, okay? 3 years. He hadn't been past the fourth round, and Ali knew all this, right? Ali continued to take heavy punishment to the body in exchange for the opportunity to land a hard jolt to Foreman's head. Ali later said he was out on his feet twice during the fight. Yeah, I watched it not last night, Sunday night. Yeah, a couple times. I thought Ali was gone, man. But he recovered. He had amazing recovery powers. But a couple times Foreman had him, but just didn't follow up on it. As Foreman began to tire, his punches began to lose power and became increasingly wild. By mid-fight, an increasingly confident Ali began to taunt the exhausted champion relentlessly, who had been reduced to mere pawing and landing harmless rubber-armed blows. Late in the 8th round, Ali came off the ropes with a series of successively harder and more accurate right hooks to the side and back of Foreman's head, leaving him dazed and careening backwards. After a lightning two-punch flurry squared him up, Ali ended the fight with a combination of solid left hooks, straight and straight rights, flush to the jaw that sent Foreman windmilling hard to the canvas. The first time he had been down in his career. Looked like a big old oak tree coming down. Yep, the rope-a-dope worked perfectly. Whether Foreman had been able to spar and train or not, he still would have fell for the rope-a-dope, right? Sparring didn't have nothing to do with his stupidity. And Joe Frazier was helping the commentator on the fight, and he said Foreman was fighting stupid, right? By falling for that rope-a-dope and just standing there, just flailing and throwing away. Because Foreman knew he hadn't been past the fourth round in 3 years, so he should have did a better job of conserving his energy. So what does not sparring and training have to do with that? You know, wearing yourself out by throwing wild punches for 8 rounds. Nothing. So he still would have got beat. Okay? So, yeah, Ali came off those ropes with a couple hooks, and the last punch was a straight right, straight to Foreman's jaw that sent him down. First time in his career. And at the stoppage, Ali led on all 3 scorecards by 68-66, 70-67, and 69-66. Yeah, Ali was, it wasn't just a rope-a-dope because Ali came out scoring. Told y'all about that lead right yesterday. That thing was beautiful. He started landing that in the first round on Foreman, right? So Foreman later reflected, it just wasn't my night. Foreman later also claimed he was drugged by his trainer prior to the fight. Now, he had been with Archie Moore a long time. Why would Archie drug him? Though he sought a rematch with Ali, he was unable to secure one. In some quarters, it was suggested Ali was ducking while taking on low-risk opponents such as Chuck Webner, Richard Dunn, John Pierre Koopman, and Alfredo Evangelista. However, Ali also fought formidable opponents such as Ron Lyle and accepted rematches with Frazier and Ken Norton, the only 2 men who have ever beaten him up until that time, right? Yeah, and if they would have had a rematch, I would have picked Ali because Ali was just so smart. He had something for everybody, and he would have had something for Foreman in the rematch too. Probably could have did the same thing. The rope-a-dope. Foreman would have fell for it again. But yeah, Joe Frazier said in the commentary that George is fighting foolish. Yeah. Okay. Then we had the Foreman verse 5. That was where he announced that he had an exhibition match in 1975, billed as Foreman verse 5, where he would fight 5 contenders in one night. It was like the 25 through 30th ranked contenders. It wasn't no top 10 contenders, okay? It wasn't like Ali, Lyle, Jimmy Young, Frazier, Larry Holmes. It wasn't them 5. It was 5 no name. And the event was meant to re-spark interest in Foreman and showcase his strength and ability to knock out opponents, right? And the first criticisms came as the opponents Foreman was fighting were revealed to be journeymen with subpar or inexperienced record. This energy transferred over to the fight, to the night of the event, as Foreman was met with boos from the crowd, as well as antagonistic chants of Ali, Ali, Ali as he made his appearance and walked out to the ring. And Ali was at ringside commentating, right? While in the ring, Foreman began to verbally spar with Ali, who was commentating ringside with Howard Cosell. After knocking out opponents, Foreman would walk over to his corner and begin to taunt Ali, to which Ali responded by yelling advice to Foreman's opponents. Right? And Foreman was met with jeers all throughout the fight as the crowd grew increasingly displeased at Foreman's defeats of his first three opponents, all by knockout. After the initial victories, Foreman, now completely enraged and exhausted, was unable to beat the last two opponents, who were met with cheers and applause for lasting against the former champion. It was considered a win if they made it the distance against him, right? So his next fight, Ron Lyle, Foreman versus Ron Lyle, okay? In 1976, Foreman announced a professional comeback and stated his intention of securing a rematch with Ali. His first opponent was to be Ron Lyle, who had been defeated by Ali in 1975 by an 11th round TKO. Okay, and that fight was said Ali got a gift because Lyle was ahead in the fight, and mysteriously, it didn't even look like Lyle was hurt. Mysteriously, the referee stopped the fight. Okay, just when Lyle was on the way to beating Ali. Now, Lyle was the number 5 rated heavyweight in the world at the time that he fought Foreman, right, by Ring Magazine. At the end of the first round, Lyle landed a hard right that sent Foreman staggering across the ring. In the second round, Foreman pounded Lyle against the ropes and might have scored a knockout, but the bell rang with 1 minute still remaining in the round, and Lyle survived. So the bell rang a minute early, and by the time they got things sorted out, Lyle had recovered. But if the bell hadn't rang a minute early like that, Foreman would have had Lyle out of there. In the third round, Foreman pressed forward with Lyle waiting to counter off the ropes. In the fourth round, a brutal slugfest erupted. A cluster of power punches from Lyle sent Foreman to the canvas. When Foreman got up, Lyle staggered him again. But just as Foreman seemed finished, he retaliated with a hard right to the side of the head, knocking Lyle down. Lyle beat the count, then landed another brutal combination, knocking Foreman down again. Again, Foreman beat the count. Foreman said later that he had never been hit so hard in a fight and remembered looking down at the canvas and seeing blood. In the fifth round, both fighters continued to ignore defense and traded their hardest punches. Looking crude, both traded their hardest punches looking crude. Each man staggered the other, and each seemed almost out on his feet. Then, as if finally tired, Lyle stopped punching, and Foreman delivered a dozen unanswered blows until Lyle collapsed to the canvas. Lyle remained down, giving Foreman a knockout victory. The fight was named by the Ring Magazine as the fight of the year. Yeah, that was a doozy there. That one. Mm-hmm. There's both big Georges. Okay. Frazier versus Foreman 2 is next. Ball-headed Joe Frazier. Okay, Frazier versus Foreman 2. It's remembering George Foreman. Tomorrow we're going to talk about Livingstone Bramble. Okay? For his next fight, Foreman chose to face Joe Frazier in a rematch. Now, Frazier was then the world's number 3 heavyweight contender per Ring Magazine. And because of the one-sided Foreman victory in their first fight, and the fact that Frazier had taken a tremendous amount of punishment from Ali in Manila, a year earlier, few expected Frazier to win. Frazier at this point was 32 wins, 3 losses, having just only lost to Foreman and Ali, right? Lost to Ali twice. And he only lost 4 fights in his career, 2 to Foreman, 2 to Ali. Fought in the toughest heavyweight era ever. Okay, the only ones that beat him, Foreman and Ali. Smoking Joe Frazier. Okay, now, however, their rematch began competitively as Frazier used quick head movements to make Foreman miss with his hardest punches. Frazier was wearing a contact lens for his vision, which was knocked loose during the fight. You knew that was going to happen. How did it even pass the pre-fight examination? I don't understand that. A boxer with a contact lens in during the fight. Wow. Unable to mount a significant offense, Frazier was eventually floored twice by Foreman in the 5th round, and the fight was stopped. Like I told y'all before, it was just a terrible matchup. And the first fight lasted 2, the second fight lasted 5. 6 knockdowns in the first fight, 2 in the second. So 7 rounds total, Frazier and Foreman. Foreman knocked Frazier down 8 times. That's a terrible matchup, you know. Frazier just gave up too much, had too much of a size disadvantage. Height, bulk, and reach against Foreman. Next, Foreman knocked out Scott Liddell in 3 rounds, and prospect John Dino Dennis in 4 rounds to finish the year. Then another big one, Foreman versus Jimmy Young. Foreman versus Young. Finally got to him and Ali. Like 3 fights after I talked about him and Ali. Okay, Foreman versus Jimmy Young. These aren't the actual people he's fighting. That was him and Ron Lyle right there. These are just some random pictures of Big George as we go through. Okay. Foreman versus Young. Now, Foreman had a life-changing year in 1977 after knocking out Pedro Augusto in 4 rounds at Pensacola, Florida. Foreman flew to Puerto Rico a day before his next fight without giving himself time to acclimatize to the climate, right? And the time change and everything. It's not without giving himself time to acclimatize. Puerto Rico is not, it's only like an hour difference, I think. You find Arnie told me. But anyway, his opponent was the skilled boxer Jimmy Young, who had beaten Ron Lyle and lost a very controversial decision to Muhammad Ali the previous year. Now, Ali got a lot of gifts, I told you, during his career. Now, Foreman he had a controversy against Lyle, controversy against Young, controversy against Norton. Arguably lost all those fights. 2 against Norton, right? He was the greatest, so you know. The greatest always going. Like in basketball, you can't touch LeBron James, they're going to blow the whistle, right? You know, Michael Jordan, Larry Bird, Magic, all the greats. You can't touch them. They don't get fouls called on them because they want them in the game for the fans, right? You don't want Magic or Larry Bird or Michael Jordan or LeBron to foul. That's who the people came to see. So you don't want Muhammad Ali to lose, and he got a lot of gifts throughout his career. Now, against Lyle, Foreman fought cautiously early on. Young, allowing Young to settle into the fight. Now, Young constantly complained about Foreman pushing him, for which Foreman eventually had a point deducted by the referee, although Young was never warned for his persistent holding. Now, Foreman badly hurt Young in round 7, but was unable to land a finishing shot. Foreman tired during the second half of the fight and suffered a knockdown in round 12 before losing by unanimous decision. Yeah, Young beat him by the unanimous decision. At that point, the referees were still scoring fights. Referee Waldemar Smith had it 118-111. Judge Cesar Ramos scored it 116-112. And Judge Ismael Wiso Fernandez scored it 115-114. All for Jimmy Young. Okay, next is retirement. Retirement for Big George. Okay. Foreman became ill in his dressing room after his fight against Young. He was suffering from exhaustion and heat stroke, and he stated he had a near-death experience. He spoke of being in a hellish, frightening place of nothingness and despair, and felt that he was in the midst of death. Though not yet religious, he began to plead with God to help him. He explained that he sensed God asking him to change his life and ways, whereupon he said, "I don't care if this is death. I still believe there is a God." Now, after this experience, Foreman became a born-again Christian, dedicating his life for the next decade to God. Although he did not formally retire from boxing, Foreman stopped fighting and became an ordained minister, initially preaching on street corners before becoming a minister of the Church of the Lord Jesus Christ in Houston, and devoting himself to his family and his congregation. He also opened a youth center that bears his name. Foreman continued to speak about his experience on Christian television broadcasts, such as the 700 Club and the Trinity Broadcasting Network. Okay? So then he made a comeback. That's when he made his comeback, right? He was out 10 years. He left in 77, came back in 87. Okay? Comeback. In 1987, after 10 years away from the ring, Foreman surprised the boxing world by announcing a comeback at the age of 38. In his autobiography, Foreman wrote that his primary motive was to raise money to fund the youth center he had created, which had required much of the money he had earned in the ring in the initial phase of his career. Another stated ambition was to fight Mike Tyson. For his first fight, he went to Sacramento, California, where he beat journeyman Steve Zosky by knockout in 4 rounds. Okay, Foreman weighed 267 pounds for the fight, largest he had ever been for a fight, and he looked badly out of shape. Although many thought his decision to return to the ring was a mistake, Foreman countered that he had returned to prove that age was not a barrier to people achieving their goals. As he said later, he wanted to show that age 40 is not a death sentence. He won 4 more fights that year. You know, coming back, had 6 fights his first year back, okay, at 40 years old, right? So he won 4 more fights that year. Well, he wasn't quite 40 yet, but close to it, gradually slimming down and improving his fitness. In 1988, he won 9 times. So George was doing some fighting. He was fighting more than the younger guys that's coming into the sport, right? Fought 6 times in his first year back, 87, 9 times in 88, 15 times his first 2 years back. In 1988, he won 9 times, including a 7th round knockout of former light heavyweight and cruiserweight champion, the white Muhammad Qawi, whom referee Carlos Padilla Jr. stopped the fight. That was a big one there. That's when everybody was like, hold up, this might be something when he stopped Qawi, right? That's when everybody started paying attention to the comeback, okay? So by 1989, while continuing his comeback, Foreman sold his name and face for the advertising of various products, most notably the very successful George Foreman Grill. His public persona improved considerably, and the formerly aloof, intimidating Foreman was replaced by a cheerful, friendly man who engaged in self-deprecation on the Tonight Show. That's what I was talking about. And, you know, we were wondering if it was the same person, you know? Like everybody that saw the first George Foreman was like, when he came back, this must be just somebody else named George Foreman. This ain't the same George Foreman. But yeah, he changed his personality entirely. Hardcore boxing news in the building. What's up, Jay Hardcore? Hashtag JBT. Let's stay hardcore from the hangout, 8 o'clock in the morning, okay? Where we go hang at. Hardcore boxing news, salute. And Al Booger is in the building. Salute, Al Booger. We just remembering George Foreman today, that's all. we're up to the point where he just came back. And I tell you, I'm always learning doing these shows too. I did not know 87, 88, his first 2 years back, George Foreman had 15 fights, man. I just found that out earlier today, but I just found it out today when I was reading this earlier. 15 fights his first 2 years back. Incredible. He was fighting more than the prospect. So yeah, he sold his name most notably to the George Foreman grill, and he changed his personality entirely, right? And he befriended Muhammad Ali, and as the latter had done, made himself a celebrity outside of the ring. Foreman continued his string of victories, winning 5 more fights, the most impressive being a 3-round win over Bert Cooper, who went on to contest the undisputed heavyweight title against Evander Holyfield. Okay? So now this is probably his first big fight in his comeback with Jerry Cooney. Okay? No, that ain't Jerry Cooney. I got him on here, but these are just some random but that is Jerry Cooney. Right? Yeah. His next fight was big gentleman Jerry Cooney. Foreman versus Cooney. In 1990, this was probably his first biggest fight of his comeback. In 1990, Foreman met former title challenger gentleman Jerry Cooney in Atlantic City, New Jersey. Cooney was coming off a long period of inactivity, but was well regarded for his punching power. Cooney wobbled Foreman in the first round, but Big George landed several powerful punches in the second round. Cooney was knocked down twice, and Foreman finished with a knockout. And Foreman went on to win 4 more fights that year. He finished Cooney with a vicious knockout. I saw that last night. It was man, I think it was like he put him with a right cross and then a uppercut, man. And I felt that through the TV. Vicious knockout. I know y'all have seen that. Yeah, that. If I was Cooney, I would have never fought again after that. So after Cooney was the Holyfield situation, okay? I don't know where Holyfield is at. So let's go back down here. There's Big George. Okay. Foreman versus Holyfield. That was a big one there. He lost it, but it was a good fight. The following year after Cooney, which was 1991, Foreman was given the opportunity to challenge undisputed heavyweight champion Evander Holyfield. This was his first title shot in his return to the ring. This was for the undisputed world heavyweight championship in a pay-per-view fight, okay? Because after he knocked out Cooney, everybody started believing in him then, so he was even on pay-per-view coming back, right? So Holyfield, I lost my place. Sorry. Yeah, it was a pay-per-view event. Now, very few boxing experts gave the 42-year-old Foreman a chance of winning. The Foreman, who weighed in at 257 pounds, began the fight by marching forward, absorbing several of Holyfield's best combinations and occasionally landing a powerful swing of his own. Now, Holyfield proved tough and agile, too tough and agile to knock down, and was well ahead on points throughout the fight. But Foreman surprised many by lasting the entire 12 rounds, losing his fight on points with scores of 116-111, 115-112, and 117-110. Although the Ring Magazine Round of the Year was not awarded in 1991, the 7th round, in which Foreman knocked Holyfield off balance before being staggered by a powerful combination, has been called a historic round of boxing and a remarkable high point of the fight. Yeah, once you tag Holyfield hard, you better look out. The game plan going out the window and Holyfield coming then. Yeah. He stuck to the game plan, but once Holyfield got hit, that was it. It was on then. And always fighting bigger men. Evander was a tough guy. Yeah. So Foreman versus Stewart. Okay. A year later, Foreman fought journeyman Alex Stewart, who had previously been stopped in the first round by Mike Tyson. The Foreman knocked Stewart down twice in the second round, but expended a lot of energy in doing so. He was subsequently tired, and Stewart rebounded. By the end of the 10th and final round, Foreman's face was bloody and swollen. But the judges gave the fight to Foreman, by majority decision. One judge had it 94-94, and the other two had it 94-93. Then Tommy Morrison was next. That's him in Norton. Morrison is somewhere up there. I think that is Morrison right there. That's somebody. That ain't Morrison. I seen a white guy. I said, oh, there go Morrison. That ain't him. Well, let's go back down here. Not the gentleman jury. Right here. It ain't Morrison. But Foreman versus Tommy Morrison. In 1993, Foreman received another title shot, although this was for the vacant WBO title. Foreman's opponent was Tommy Morrison, a young prospect known for his punching power. The Morrison retreated throughout the fight, refusing to trade toe-to-toe, and sometimes turned his back on Foreman. The strategy paid off, though, and he outboxed Foreman from long range. After 12 rounds, Morrison won a unanimous decision with two scores of 117-110, and one judge had it 118-109. Morrison outboxed him very widely. Okay. Now, in this period, Foreman also starred briefly in the situation comedy George on ABC. The show, which featured Foreman as a retired boxer, premiered in November 1993 and ran for 9 episodes, though 10 were made. The show was co-produced by actor and former boxer Tony Danza. Now we come to his second reign as heavyweight champion. That's Shannon Briggs there. Where you at, Michael Moore? The Moore had on yellow. I watched this last night too. Moore had on yellow. Oh. Ain't gonna have no pictures left in a minute. Oh well. I don't have Michael Morris, sorry. But second we get ready to talk about this, and look who I find now. Tommy Morrison. Well, okay. No, that's not Morrison. But anyway, finally getting to his second title reign, 20 years after he's the only man to win the heavyweight title 20 years after losing it. He's also the only man to ever win the heavyweight title by beating a fighter 19 years younger than he was. Rusty Cage, what's up, Rusty? Good to see you again. Rusty Cage back in the building again. Salute, Rusty. Okay. We're talking about just remembering Big George Foreman today, just doing a little run through his career, that's all. We're right at the fight where he became champion again, made history. Okay. Still the oldest heavyweight champion. He was the oldest champion in boxing until B-Hop surpassed him, but still the oldest heavyweight. Foreman versus Moorer, okay? That's not him and Moorer on the screen there, but, you know, it's Foreman. In 1994, Foreman again sought the challenge for the World Championship after Michael Moorer had beaten Holyfield for the IBF and WBA titles. So he would become lineal again too, because if you beat Moorer, he beat the man that beat the man, right? Moorer had to become lineal, you know, you got to beat a champion and beat another champion. So this is for lineal. He was lineal the first time when he beat Frazier because Frazier had beaten Ali. I don't know because Ali was the lineal champion. Because throughout his suspension, Ali remained the lineal champion. So he's going after the lineal championship again. Okay? Having lost his last fight against Tommy Morrison, Foreman was unranked and in no position to demand another title shot. His relatively high profile, however, made a title shot against Moorer, 19 years his junior, a lucrative prospect at seemingly little risk for the champion. And you know, Bob Arum paid off for that, man, for that title shot for Foreman. That was his promoter. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Bob Arum admittedly that he paid for some of his fighters to get title shots and with the IBF and favorable positions in the ranking. He testified against the president of the IBF back in the day, and the president of the IBF, his son, and some other officials went to jail. Don King was mixed up in it, but Don King took the fifth. But the Godfather sang like a bird. Mm-hmm. Now, Foreman's title challenge against Mora took place on November 5th in Las Vegas, Nevada, with Foreman wearing the same red trunks he had worn in his title loss to Ali 20 years earlier. And if the Godfather was paying him off then, he's doing it now. Okay? He was in his 60s then, so he haven't changed. All of a sudden become this big, honest guy. He was paying him off then, he paying him off now. But Foreman had the same red trunks on that he wanted when he lost his title 20 years earlier to Ali in this fight. And guess what? One of the same trainers was involved in the fight. Angelo Dundee, who had trained Ali when Foreman lost his title to Ali 20 years earlier. In this fight, Angelo Dundee was in Foreman's corner, okay? We had Angelo Dundee in the corner. Foreman's, took place on November 5th, right? Now, this time, however, Foreman was a substantial underdog. He was favored the last time against Ali, remember? And it was kind of like a role reversal because Ali was 7 years older than Foreman. Didn't nobody give him a chance. They put the upset. Nobody gave Foreman a chance this time, right? So for 9 rounds, Mora easily outboxed Foreman, hitting and moving away, while Foreman chugged forward, seemingly unable to pull the trigger on his punches. Entering the 10th round, Foreman was trailing on all scorecards. 2 judges had it 88-83 and one had it 86-85, all to Mora. So he needed a knock on. Angelo Dundee told him now was the time to get it. And Mora's trainer, Teddy Atlas, told Mora, stand back away from Foreman and let Foreman come to you. But Michael Mora did not follow Teddy Atlas's instructions and came in there and charged right at Foreman and got caught, He did not follow Teddy Atlas's instructions. Teddy Atlas was a great veteran trainer and knew what he was doing. He told him, stand back. You got to fight one. Don't keep pressing this man. But Michael Mora kept pressing and got caught. Let's talk about when he got caught, okay? Now, Foreman launched a comeback in the 10th round and hit Mora with a number of punches. Then a short right hand caught Mora on the tip of his chin, gashing open his bottom lip, and he collapsed to the canvas. Now, if he'd have followed Teddy Atlas's instructions and stood back, this short right hand would not have got him, okay? So follow your trainer's instructions. You are paying them to give you those instructions. So why not follow them? If you're not going to follow your trainer's instructions, then you wasted your money paying them, right? Be your own trainer. But anyway, Mora collapsed to the canvas. He lay flat on the canvas as the referee counted him out. In an instant, Foreman had regained the title he had lost to Muhammad Ali 2 decades earlier. He went back to his corner and knelt in prayer as the arena erupted in cheers. The crowd went wild. With this historic victory, Foreman broke 3 records. Okay, number 1, he became at age 45 the oldest fighter ever to win a world championship. 20 years after losing his title for the first time. He broke number 2, he broke the record for the fighter with the longest interval between his first and second world championships. And the age spread of 19 years between the champion and challenger was the largest of any heavyweight boxing championship fight. That was the 3rd record right there, okay? So now he's fighting as a defending champion. He fought Schultz. Shortly after the 1994 Mora fight, Foreman began talking about a potential super fight with Mike Tyson, then the youngest heavyweight champion on record. That would have been a pay-per-view extravaganza. The youngest heavyweight champion in boxing against the oldest. But Cus D'Amato had told Mike Tyson before he passed away, don't you ever fight George Foreman. See what happened to Joe Frazier? The same thing gonna happen to you. And Mike heeded that advice. And I believe it would have. But the only difference was Mike would have went down like 2 times. Mike wouldn't have kept getting up. Like Mike didn't have the heart Joe Frazier had. Mike wouldn't have got up 6 times. After like 2 knockdowns, it'd have been over. But he would have knocked Mike Tyson out just like he did Joe Frazier. Just like Customato told Mike, don't fight George Foreman, and Mike never did, right? He would have been at the same disadvantages that Frazier had. He would have had too much to go through to get inside against Big George Foreman, right? But that would have been something, the youngest heavyweight champion against the oldest heavyweight champion. Think of the storyline for that, man. Wow. Okay, so they were trying to make a fight between Mike Tyson and George Foreman. The New York Times quoted Foreman as stating, if Tyson does this time with Don King, we'll fight before the end of the year. I can't be bothered having trouble with Don King. Every contract has some complications. Tyson signed with Don King, and by 1988, he was suing him for $100 million, right? And the fight between Foreman and Tyson never materialized. And the WBA demanded that Foreman fight their number 1 challenger, who at the time was a competent but aging Tony Tucker, right? Tony Tucker was number 1 at that time. So Foreman refused to fight Tucker and allowed the WBA to strip him of their title. On April 22nd, 1995, Foreman fought mid-level underdog prospect Axel Schultz of Germany in defense of his remaining, he still had the IBF, remember, title. Now Schultz jabbed strongly from long range and exhibited increasing confidence as the fight went on. Foreman finished the fight with a swelling over one eye, but was awarded a very controversial majority decision. Yeah, I think Schultz won that one, with one judge ruling the fight a draw, 114-114. The other 2 had to fight 115-113 in favor of Foreman. Yeah, he should have lost his belt. And the IBF thought so too, because they ordered an immediate rematch to be held in Germany. Then they sent him to Germany. Foreman refused the terms and was stripped of his remaining title. Yet continued to be recognized as a lineal heavyweight champion. Yeah, because why would he have to go to Germany? He's the champion. Well, I would have refused that too. But then they stripped him. Okay. So in his post-title career, he fought Shannon Briggs, right? I went past that way back there somewhere. Shannon Briggs. But he fought him in his post-fight career. After they stripped him. That's when he fought Shannon. Okay. But let's move along. There's both Georges. Shannon Briggs. This was in 1996. Went to Tokyo and he got an easy win over Crawford Grimsley by a 12-round decision. Okay. Then he faced Lou Savarese, won a close split decision. It was a grueling competitive fight. Then yet another opportunity came Foreman's way as the WBC decided to match him up against Shannon Briggs in a 1997 eliminator fight for the right to face WBC champion Lennox Lewis, right? After 12 rounds in which Foreman consistently rocked Briggs with power punches, almost everyone at ringside saw Foreman as the clear winner. Like Foreman's fight with Schultz, the decision was highly controversial, but this time it went against Foreman, right? And he gave it to Briggs. Majority decision, just like Schultz. One judge had it 114-114. The other 2 had 117-113, 116-112 for Briggs. And that was a travesty because Foreman won that fight and deserved that shot against Lennox Lewis. Yeah, that was terrible the way they did Big George, you know? So final retirement, right? This time he retired for good. Though it was not aired, a travelogue series of the Walt Disney Parks and Resorts called the Walt Disney Magic Hour hosted by Foreman, was supposed to debut as part of Pax's. Okay, let's move past that. Right. He was gracious in his loss to Briggs, but announced his final retirement shortly after the fight. But he did, after that, have a potential return against Larry Holmes, right? In 1999, scheduled to take place at the Houston Astrodome. Who would want to see that? It was called the Birthday Bash because both fighters' birthdays was coming up. Now, Foreman was set to make $10 million. Holmes was set to make $4 million. But negotiations fell through, thank the Lord. Nobody wanted to see them two old fossils in there fighting, right? And the fight was canceled. With continuing affinity for the sport, Foreman became a respected boxing analyst for HBO, right? Now, he had no plans to come back to the ring after that. But then in February 2004, he announced he was training for one more fight to demonstrate. By that time, he was 55. Like the age of 40 is not a death sentence. Now, the fight was against an unspecified opponent, rumored to be Trevor Berbick. Trevor was up there himself, but it never materialized. Foreman's wife was widely thought to have been a major factor in why the fight didn't happen, right? Remember what I said yesterday when Miss Cash sent me to the store at 20 minutes to 2. 20 minutes before the show, I went. Remember why? Happy wife, happy life. And when Foreman's wife said, you ain't fighting no more. You see, he didn't fight anymore, did he? Okay. Happy wife, happy life. So Foreman left the sport of boxing once he left HBO to pursue other interests. He had his ministerial career. He had some other works. 2022, Foreman completed season 8 of The Masked Singer as Venus Flytrap. He was eliminated on Hall of Fame night alongside George Clinton as Gopher. You know George Clinton, Parliament's Funkadelic Claim. Yeah, he was on the mothership that time I went on there. You know, they made me get off before they took off. But I was on there. You're George Clinton, right? Dr. Funkenstein. Foreman also served, excuse me, I got off track. I'm sorry. I seen George Clinton's name and went away. I'm sorry. Anyway, Foreman also served, but I have been on the mothership. Foreman also served as an executive producer on Big George Foreman, a 2023 Christian file based on the sporting and spiritual life. Okay, well, let's do this, and then we're going to get like 20 minutes of link time. Okay. Personal life and death for Big George Foreman. Okay. Then we're going to shut it down. Personal life and death. Okay. Foreman was married to Mary Joan Martelli from 1985 until his death last week, matter of fact. He had 4 previous marriages. Wow, George. To Adrienne Calhoun from 1971 to 1974. Cynthia Lewis from 1977 to 79. Karen Goodson from 81 to 82. Andrea Skeet from 82 to 85. The longest marriage he had lasts 4 years. So how long will it take a person to figure that marriage is just not for them? You know, you don't care. If you've been 4 times and none of them go past 4 years, you know, marriage probably not your bag. Now, Foreman had 12 children, 5 sons and 7 daughters. His 5 sons are all named George, right? But they got nicknames, right? You got George Jr. I guess Jr. is his nickname. George III is Monk. George IV is Big Wheel. And George V is Red. So they had 5. He got a George VI, Little Joey. On his website, Foreman explained, I named all my sons George Edward Foreman so they would always have something in common. That's crazy. They would all have something in common. They had something in common. You are their fathers. You had to give them the same name. Wow. George said, I say to them, if one of us goes up, then we all go up together. And if one of us goes down, we all go down together. Not necessarily. Just because you got the same name don't mean you're going to share with him, right? But as with his father, George III, who was George III? Was Monk. George III, also known as Monk, has pursued a career in boxing and entrepreneurship. George IV is Big Wheel. He appeared on the second season of the reality television series American Grit, where he played seventh. His 7 daughters are Natalia, Leola, Frida, Michi, and get this, even named one of his daughters Georgette. Just couldn't had to do it, didn't you, George? Named one of his daughters Georgette. Isabella and Courtney. Natalia and Leola are from his marriage to Mary Joan Martelli. His daughters from separate relationships are Frida, Mickey, and Georgetta. Yep, had to name one. I had to put that George on one of his daughters. He adopted a daughter, Isabella Brandy Legion Foreman, in 2009, and another, Courtney Isaac, in 2012. You got 12 children already. What the? He adopted 2 more. Now, Frida, his daughter, had a 5-1 record as a professional boxer. She retired in 2001. She died in 2019 at age 42 in an apparent suicide. Isabella Foreman, another daughter, lives in Sweden, where she has blogged since 2010 under the name of Belia Nutella, right? In recognition of Foreman's patriotism and community service, the American Legion honors him with its James V. Day Good Guy Award during his 95th National Convention in 2013, okay? Foreman died at a hospital in Houston, Texas on March 21st, 2025 at 76 years old. Rest in peace, Big George Foreman. And there you have it. The life and career of Big George Foreman. And we now have Unc Dre Finest in the building. What's up, Unc Dre Finest? We were just remembering Big George Foreman today. Passed away, left us Friday. Tomorrow, don't forget, we're going to be remembering, I'm sorry. Yeah. Livingstone Bramble. I'm sorry, I forgot the name momentarily. We're going to be remembering Livingstone Bramble tomorrow, okay? I'm going to drop the link. We're going to get like 20 minutes of link time. You know, anybody got anything? A favorite George Foreman fight or favorite George Foreman anything, come on up. Link is welcome. Everybody is welcome to the link, okay? Let me get that in. Okay. And Thomas Hill, I'm dropping the link. Thomas Hill hit the link at 2 minutes to 4 yesterday. You know I got to pick with you, T. Hill. That's my main man there, the legendary Thomas Hill. Yeah. Yeah, Big George, but you know, yeah, when he came back in the 80s, though, really, man, the people that saw him in the 70s, I mean, I swore it wasn't even the same guy, man, because he just changed his personality totally, man. Dre probably can tell you. 70s, he was a bad interview, he frowned up all the time, and then in the 80s, he just run in front of every camera he could find, you know, and it was like, that's not George Foreman. No way. Yeah, but he just did redid himself and became popular outside the ring and everything, and won his championship back, right? Yes, he did. Set all kinds of records. Set 3 records. He was the longest time between losing the title and winning it, 20 years, and oldest man in boxing and at heavyweight to win it at 45 in the heavyweight title of boxing period at that time, but he lost at the B-Hop. Still the oldest heavyweight. And the 3rd record was, it was the oldest age differential between 2 fighters in a heavyweight fight, right? When he won the championship, Michael Moore was 19 years younger than him. That was another record. And was losing, needed a knockout. I told you Michael Moore didn't listen to his trainer. Teddy Atlas told Michael Moore to stand back and fight him from outside, but Moore kept pressing and got caught by that short right. Listen to Teddy Atlas, he wouldn't have been in range for that short right. But you know, I don't understand these fighters. Why you paying this trainer money? It's like wasting your money if you don't listen to him, right? So damn, if I'm not gonna listen to my trainer, I ain't gonna have him. Keep that money in. I don't know what percentage the trainer gets, but he gets something. He ain't doing it for free. And then they get in there and don't want to listen to him. That's crazy, man. But Michael Moore paid the price. He got knocked out by a short right. And his trainer told him to stand back, Teddy Atlas. Gray says George did not have that mean streak anymore. George was known as a killer. That's right, big Uncle Gray, when he came back. Yeah, man. I couldn't believe it was the same person. I'm like, that ain't George Foreman. Not smiling and running in front of cameras, giving interviews. No, George Foreman don't do that. He's the worst interview ever. And he said he was trying to emulate Sonny Liston, though, by acting like that, the first time. Yeah. And he did a good job of it. And Sonny was just, I don't know what I did. Man. But good to see you, Dre. Always a pleasure. Oh, there we go. I thought I had messed up. Let me see. Let me get T Hill up here. There we go. Thomas Hill is in the building. What's up, T Hill?
You know, you got the best hand, Cav. Talk to me. Tell me what it is.
Oh no, well, just on big. That's all. That's all. What's up with you today?
Oh man, handling some errands right now. Just chilling, listening to you talk about old George.
Yeah.
And the career he had and all the things that he did to influence and inspire other fighters.
For sure.
And you said that's one of your favorite moments. Him. I know she's gonna stay outside right now until we get back. One of my favorite moments was the Moore fight.
Yeah.
I thought that, as you said, he was trailing big time on that fight. Moore was boxing beautifully.
Yes.
He only had like 2 moments where he was in some real trouble throughout that course of the fight.
Yep, entire fight.
But Big George, he got that punch, and that punch, boy, it could change the course of a fight at any moment.
Yeah.
Unfortunately for Moore that day, it was the punch that connected.
But T Hill, Teddy Atlas had told Moore before the 10th round to box him from the outside. Yeah. If he had followed those instructions, that short right wouldn't have got him. That was the punch that took him out.
Absolutely.
But he kept pressing forward and got caught. But like you said, it was a beautiful short right here that got him. Yeah. Yep. But it was a great career for Big George.
I don't know if you can hear me or not, because I might have.
I can hear you. Loud and clear.
Okay. Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, like you said, I've seen many cases where fighters have gone against the advisement of their corners and to their detriment. To me, like you said, why you got a corner if you're not going to listen to him?
Right. Why pay him? Keep the money and be your own trainer. It's crazy.
Sometimes you get in the heat of the moment. And
That's true. And more.
Case in point, man, I watch all sports. I'm a USC fan. And, Juju just got hurt.
Yeah.
Now, Juju, 2 days prior to getting hurt last night, she went to the basket and turned her ankle. And she's going to the basket in between two defenders. Yeah. And, unfortunately, it's causing her body to come into contact with people, leaving her at a difficult setting with her standing, her balance. And, it was only a matter of time before something like that truly actually took place. And you hate to see it, but sometimes you gotta have a fallback, and you gotta have somebody advising you. Like, look, That's you right. can do it a little bit easier this way. And my man was getting that advisement in the ring. Teddy Atlas was giving him tremendous advisement. He just didn't want to listen. And it's because you impassioned. you're in that rage of the moment.
You know?
You say what?
I said a great veteran trainer, Teddy Atlas. You know?
Yeah, and you know, he was in the moment.
Yeah, that's
sometimes
true.
It's like, oh, well, you hit me, I'm gonna show you I could take it, and I'm gonna give it back to you.
That's true.
And a lot of times that machismo, that bravado, be the one thing that get us.
That's so
and unfortunately, man, they got him.
Yeah, because he was having so much success and was winning big. So yeah, he got caught up in the moment. You're 100% right. That's exactly what happened. You know?
Yeah, man. But nothing to take away from the fighter that Foreman was. I mean, Foreman was a fighter who actually had a tremendous skill set, even though, you know, he had tremendous power. Oftentimes people don't acknowledge the fact that, you know, he was very skilled.
You said it. He had that punch that could any moment could change the fight.
Yeah, and a lot of times you get handicapped as a boxer because of that, because people say, oh, you're just a power puncher or this, this, and that. So that whenever you don't show or display pure boxing skills, they'll go back to that fallback. Oh, well, see, he just only has power. And unfortunately, that's not the case for that. That man was a truly great fighter, and he was truly savvy in that ring.
Yes, he was. He wasn't just getting
enjoyed his career, man. And like I said, it's amazing to be able to come back and dominate the sport in your advanced years, man. Show how much of a superior athlete he truly was.
Yeah.
Because that's not easy to do.
No, it's not. Over 40. He was a young man's sport, but he showed he still had it, you know? Because, you know, early in his career, he wasn't going to, like I was talking about leading to the Ali fight. He hadn't went over 4 rounds in like 4 years. So he didn't take a lot of punishment and stuff early in his career. So that helped, you know, come be having all that left in the gas tank later, you know. Yeah. Because he was getting them up out of there in the early 70s. You know, 1, 2, 3 rounds. Foreman was more than
well, back then he was a menace.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, you know, he was fighting with a lot of rage, a lot of anger.
Yeah.
And he showed in the ring. You know, I think that was the reason why he wasn't embraced. Then also, you know, you got to factor in the fact that, you know, you got a Muhammad Ali. And I don't care who you are, you're gonna always play second fiddle to a Muhammad Ali type personality. It's just effervescent, and on top of that, you know, he has everything you want in an icon, so to speak. But I think he realized that he had to reformulate the way that he did things, and then I think also his relationship with God helped him to help rebrand himself too, and it worked out because people fell in love with him.
I know when he came back with his personality and as a minister and everything, and they had that George Foreman grill. But that's right. What Dre said, Michael Moore never was the same after that, man. After that loss,
absolutely.
You hear too much more about him after. I don't think he ever became champion again. I know that. No, he didn't.
No, he didn't.
Yeah, I think that messed him up a lot mentally because he had to fight one, you know. And yeah.
So, what you think about the possible fight between Keyshawn Davis and Edwin De Los Santos?
I would pick Keyshawn.
It seems to be getting a lot of traction. I guess they're on their ways of trying to put that together.
But that would be good.
I would like to see the fight. I think that, you know, it would be a tough fight for De Los Santos to come back on because he's been out that ring for so long.
Oh, yeah, he has.
But at the same time, he is. You said what?
You know, I would like to see T Hill.
Who that?
Keyshawn and Muratalla. That's who.
I would love to see that fight.
Muratalla is underrated, man. He don't get the prop and talk.
I would love to see that fight.
Yeah.
And honestly, that's a fight that I think, you know, will have the full blessing of the Bob father.
Yeah, because he keeps the belt no matter who wins.
Because he has been promoting Muay Thai too, you know, and he was trying to move Muay Thai into a spot. I was actually thinking that that's what he was going to use that that title that Loma has for. I thought he would try to position him for that, and then eventually position Abdullah Mason if he could be able to maintain the weight cut. I don't know how much longer he actually has at the division because he's a big 135.
Yeah, tall too. Yeah. Yeah, by the end of this year, he might be gone. You know.
But that would be a great fight. I would be definitely willing to see.
Easy to make. You know.
It is easy to make. Yeah. It's in house, so you know there's always that. Then there's the fact that, you know, Mortai has been itching for a title fight. He gets one right there and right there.
Yeah, he did everything they asked of him, you know.
That further validates Keyshawn if you're trying to push him. It'll also validate Mortai if you're trying to push him.
That's right.
So, yeah, you know, I'm with it. I would love to see that fight.
It's Della Santos.
Yeah, you know, I just don't know Della Santos coming back to fight.
Is he with Top Rank, Della Santos? I'm not sure. Who was that? Dre said so. The S need a tune-up first.
Yeah, I think a tune-up is necessary. I don't think fighters. I wish fighters would. If we look back in the good old days of fighting, not every fight was a major fight.
No,
they had fights that they took to get themselves prepped for that major fight.
For sure.
There's nothing wrong with that. Only certain people are going to get held to that standard where, you know, they're not fighting the fights that we want to see. But in all honesty, there's really no one at this current time besides maybe you could say Benavidez, you could say Usyk. Those are the only two that I see that's just like, okay, well, this is the person that I can fight.
Yeah.
That I'll fight this person then. I'm trying to get this person, but I'll fight this person to make up for that. And more times than not, it's a lot of people not fighting one another. But unfortunately, you know, it get applied to only certain folks. But I do believe, exactly. I do believe we need to see the fights, though. I do believe that our fighters need to be moved by the sanctioning bodies and also by the people who make decisions with regards to like mandatories and things like that.
Yeah.
If there are unifications available, I think that they should start pushing for unifications as well to start to see if we can get more of the fights that we need. Now, I know promoters won't be down with that because they want to continue to have a stranglehold on belts because belts lure talent.
You know that.
But having the ability to fight for a belt is just as good as having a belt, man. So, you know, if you could get to see that no matter where you're at, you can fight for a belt, that'll also lure in talent too. You just got to continuously put them in position to make those fights. And then when they get the chance to make the fights.
That's true.
And I think then so that I would like to see going forward the boxing community pushing for more unifications and pushing for more major be made.
Unification is good.
And
less champions and everything.
Getting behind each. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, and on our end, not discrediting these fighters. Like, it's not easy to do what they're doing. Yeah, we'll down them in a heartbeat, and we can't do what they do. So, you know, to me, we need to do a better job of respecting.
Yeah, for
them as fighters.
I say that all the time.
And you know, we're not never in the negotiating rooms. We're not in the training camps, but we speak as if we have authority. None of us have authority.
And you know, they all grown men and grown women end up throwing hands at each other's heads. I don't care what level you at. That's rough. You know, you're in that ring getting them hands coming at you. So we got to get them men and women their props, man, you know. You still there, T Hill? Yeah, I never have disrespected fighters, man. You know, there's nothing easy about it. You in there ducking them hands and stuff. People have died in there, you know. That Korean fighter just died last year. He was on the Monster card in December 2023 when Monster got his second undisputed. He, I think, collapsed after his fight. Then he went into a coma in the hospital. He died early 2024. So there ain't nothing that we had deaths in the ring recently, as recently as last year. I done lost Thomas Hill. It's time to get out anyway, though. But I appreciate everybody that came through today. Hope you enjoyed the Big George profile. And tomorrow we are going to honor Livingstone Bramble. Passed away, I believe it was Saturday. Solid boxer from the 80s, late 70s, 80s. I don't think he went into the 90s, but did most of his work in the 80s. Livingstone Bramble tomorrow. So join us then. Appreciate Thomas Hill for coming up. Probably busy at work out there. But yeah, join me tomorrow for the Livingstone Bramble. Remembering Livingstone Bramble, okay? Join me for that. Because, you know, if it's Monday through Friday, 2 p.m., it's the Boxtorian bringing you all that boxing history. Just Do Boxing is straight ahead. This is Cast Sports. Appreciate y'all. Everybody have a great afternoon. And I will see y'all around those JBT streets.